You're listening to Off the Cuff. Now, here's your host, Adam Banks.
Welcome, everybody, to Off the Cuff. I am Adam Banks, broadcasting from Lexington, Kentucky. Thank you for tuning in to WLXU 93.9. In addition to listening on the radio, you can check out our Facebook live stream at Off the Cuff with Adam Banks, or you can stream the show live from the station website at radiolex.us. I am broadcasting from the Deborah Hensley studios here at Radio Lex on North Limestone. It is January the 30th, 2025, and I have to start off the show with an apology. I said last week on the show that our next broadcast would be our 300th radio broadcast, but in fact, folks, this broadcast right here is radio broadcast 299. That is right. I was off by one episode, and how that happened is I usually put all of my episodes on a playlist on YouTube, and that helps me keep track of how many radio broadcasts that we have done. Well, it said last time I looked at it that we have done 299, and I was like, okay, this next broadcast is the 300th. But what happened was I accidentally uploaded a video in that playlist that didn't need to be there, and in fact, this right here is radio broadcast 299, and next week will be our 300th radio broadcast. So we are still just a week away, but folks, we are now officially just 1 week away from the Super Bowl, and I am talking about, well, actually, I say 1 week away. We are, a week away, 2 weeks away from the Super Bowl? It is February the 9th, whenever that is. That's just 2 weeks. The Chiefs and the Eagles will meet again in the Super Bowl. It is officially set. They headlined the Super Bowl just 2 years ago when Kansas City took home the trophy, so we will see a rematch that will take place at Super Bowl 59 at the Superdome in New Orleans at 6:30 p.m. on Fox. And that is going to be a big game. It's always a big game. It's the biggest game of the entire year for this country. The Super Bowl is an American event. There have been arguments before. Should workers in the workforce get a day off work after Super Bowl? Sure. I think here in America, we should do things differently than everybody else around the world. And part of our culture is the Super Bowl. Even people who don't watch football watch the Super Bowl. This is just a part of being an American, watching the Super Bowl. That is a part of our culture. That's what's ingrained in our culture. So yeah, I think that the day after the Super Bowl should be a national holiday, but that is still on the docket to be determined. I don't know if that will actually take effect, but one could dream. Now, the one thing that people want to watch the Super Bowl for is the commercials, and the other thing is the halftime show. But folks, the other thing is betting. People love to bet on the Super Bowl, and one of the things that people love to bet the most is these things called prop bets, and that's when you get to make little silly bets on the Super Bowl halftime show or the national anthem. So I have took the liberty to go ahead and let you know everything that you can bet on when it comes to the Super Bowl game on February the 9th. Now, let's talk about the game itself. You can do an over-under on the total score. They set the line at 48.5, so you can bet over or under on that. You can also bet on the probability of who is going to win, the money line. Now, the Chiefs are favored to win the Super Bowl by 55%, so they are the favorite. So if you bet the Chiefs straight up to win, you won't win as much if you would have bet on the Eagles to win. So there are tons of in-game bets that you can make, and you can check all of that out on your particular betting app that you use. But as far as the halftime show goes, that is where Kendrick Lamar is performing. You can bet on what his first song is going to be. The favorites are songs Humble and Not Like Us. You can also vote for the last song that he will perform. The favorites are Not Like Us and All the Stars. And you can also bet on the odds for if Kendrick Lamar will wear a hoodie for his first song. You can also make a bet on the odds for how many songs Kendrick Lamar will perform. The over-under is set at 10.5. The odds for a celebrity guest to appear with Kendrick Lamar is something else you can bet on. Some of the favorites are Future, Metro Boomin, Lil Wayne, but there are several artists on the list, Taylor Swift being one of them. You can also bet on the odds for if Drake will release a song on Super Bowl Sunday. And the reason that's even on the board is because Kendrick Lamar's enemy in the rap world is Drake, and they have before released diss songs against one another, talking crap about one another. So the world is wondering, will Drake release a song talking crap about Kendrick Lamar the morning of the Super Bowl? You can bet on that. You can also bet on the national anthem as well. The national anthem is going to be performed by this fella named, last name Battisti. I don't really know who that is. Why do we get artists that the whole world just don't universally know? I don't get it. But some guy with that last name is going to be performing the national anthem. So you can bet on how long the national anthem is going to go. It is set currently at 120.5 seconds. You can also bet on whether the performer will perform the anthem with or without a piano. Also, you can bet on the color of the performer's hair. Will the performer wear a hat? The color, style of the performer's outfit and shoes. Will the performer make a mistake? Will a scoring drive take less than a length of the national anthem? And those are some of the prop bets that you can make on the Super Bowl this year. So, folks, people watch the Super Bowl for many things. One, just to be a part of the culture. 2, the game itself. 3, the commercials. 4, the halftime show. And 5 is betting. I think for the most part, those pretty much are the biggest reasons why people watch the Super Bowl. And you can check out the Super Bowl, folks, on February the 9th. But we have a great show ahead of you today. You are listening to Off the Cuff with Adam Banks. Stick with us. We will be right back. Welcome back, everybody, to Off the Cuff. Adam Banks here with you. Last week on the show, we did a whole segment talking about some of the most memorable television commercials of all time, and we did that in light of the upcoming Super Bowl because commercials is such a big part of the game. But folks, there are more commercials out there that are made for other mediums besides television. And one of those mediums just so happens to be my favorite medium, and that is the medium of radio. Radio advertising has to be one of the most underrated types of media in the industry because you have this rise of podcasting, you have the rise of just streaming platforms. So radio is stronger than ever, which means advertising on the radio is just as strong as advertising on the television. And folks, last week on the show, we talked about some of the most memorable TV commercials of all time. But this week on the show, what I would like to do is talk about some of the most iconic radio commercials of all time, some of the most iconic radio advertisements. And radio is so effective. And the thing about radio, to make a great radio commercial, you have to really focus on the sound. When you're doing a television commercial, it's all about the visual and the sound. But with radio, it is all about the sound. So you really have to be more creative when coming up with an audio commercial, a commercial made for radio. The ability to weave stories, evoke emotions, and create lasting memories, all without a visual component, is a very difficult thing to do. So what I would like to do is share with you some of the most iconic radio advertisements that have ever existed. And you may recognize some of these advertisements on the list because, folks, you too have been driving in your car in the past or maybe even in the last couple of years, and you might have heard one of these radio advertisements. These radio advertisements are great because they take on serious topics, humorous topics, all kinds of different scenarios these particular radio commercials will take on. And I am very excited to share my list. And folks, we are going to start my list of one of the most iconic radio commercials of all time with this commercial from Maxwell House Coffee from the 1950s. And I am a big Maxwell coffee drinker. I think they've got the best general coffee out there. Lots. I mean, it doesn't even compare to Folgers. I love the Folgers jingle, but Maxwell Coffee, I think, has the better coffee. And they created this ad in the 1950s. And what makes this ad so memorable for radio listeners is that they did focus on the sound. And in this particular commercial for Maxwell House Coffee, they wanted to let you know what the coffee pot sounds like when you are making your cup of hot Maxwell coffee. Take a listen, folks, at one of the most iconic commercials that has ever existed from the Maxwell Coffee House in 1950. Take a listen.
Smell good ground coffee. That's Maxwell House Coffee. Listen to the sound of the Maxwell House Coffee pot at work. Of this good-smelling coffee. It will taste as good as it smells because it's good ground Maxwell House. Maxwell House coffee is good to the last drop. Enjoy the rich, fresh taste of Maxwell House coffee. The ground coffee that tastes as good as it smells every time. Maxwell House.
I mean, by just using the sound of the coffee pot, just using the sound alone built an emotional connection with the listeners. It evoked feelings of warmth and comfort. So it was just a very simple ad that focused on the sound. And that's what makes a great radio commercial. Okay, next up on my list of one of the most iconic radio commercials of all times is another beverage. This is a famous beverage. This is from Pepsi. And this particular commercial, again, focuses on the audio, focuses on the sound. And what they really wanted to drive home in this particular advertisement is they wanted to drive home the price. The price of a Pepsi back in the day, the 1930s, was only a nickel. 5 cents is all a Pepsi would cost. Now, eventually, the economy would raise the prices of other drinks like Coke and other beverages, but Pepsi remained a nickel. So they wanted to make sure that you knew that you were drinking a beverage that only cost a nickel. And they did it with this fabulous advertisement from the 1930s. Take a listen.
Pepsi-Cola, it's the pot, 12 ounces, that's a lot, twice as much for a nickel too. Pepsi-Cola is the drink for you. Nickel, 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 nickel.
Love it, love it, love it. It just drives the price home. They kept saying nickel, 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 nickel all the way through until it just kind of gets stuck in your head. It was a great commercial for Pepsi to put out there. All right, folks, next up on the list as one of the most iconic radio commercials out there is from Wheaties. Now, this commercial was also from the 1930s, and what's interesting about this commercial right here is that this is the first radio jingle of all time. And we've done a whole segment on this show before in our archives. You can check that out, where we've talked about some of the greatest advertising jingles of all time. I don't really remember if this made the list. I would assume it did because it was the first jingle ever created. But this was the first jingle ever created for a commercial, period. It just so happened to be a radio commercial. And this commercial began airing in the 1930s, and it's one of the most famous commercials of all time, talking about the breakfast of champions. The phrase not only promoted the cereal, but it also associated it with athletic prowess and success. So when you were on the cover of a Wheaties box, you were the athlete that was the star. You were the biggest athlete in the world. So Have You Tried Your Wheaties is a jingle that they came out with for this cereal. And it was the first jingle ever created, period, for an advertisement. Here it is.
Like to buy the world a home and furnish it with love. Grow apple trees and honey bees and snow white turtle doves. I like to teach the world to sing with me. I like to buy the world a Coke and keep it company. That's the real.
Mistake there. That was actually from I Would Like to Buy the World a Coke. That was another commercial that I was going to play. I skipped over the Wheaties ad. Here is the Wheaties ad, but what you just heard was a commercial from Coke. I Would Like to Buy the World a Coke, which made the list, but it wasn't the one that I wanted to play for you. Here is the jingle from Have You Tried Your Wheaties? Take a listen.
Have you tried Wheaties? They're whole wheat with all of the bran. Won't you try Wheaties? For wheat is the best food of man. They're crispy and crunchy the whole year through. The kiddies never tire of them, and neither will you. So just buy Wheaties, the best breakfast food in the land.
Yes. Very, very authentic, very vintage there. You can tell it's old. I love that crackle that you can hear in the background. First jingle ever created right there. All right, I already played the I'd Love to Buy the World a Coke ad from Coca-Cola, so we'll skip over that and move on to our next one. And this next one is also a radio ad from the 1930s. This is when Campbell's Soup debuted their jingle for their brand, Campbell's Soup. And they created the slogan, good. And they added it into a jingle, and they debuted this jingle in a radio ad in the 1930s. Now, Campbell's Soup has put on some pretty daggone iconic commercials for television. I mean, you remember that Christmas commercial where the snowman is coming into the house and he eats a bowl of Campbell's Soup and he melts, and you find out that the snowman was a little boy. And at the end of every Campbell's commercial, they always say, good. That's the slogan for Campbell's Soup. Well, this is the jingle that introduced the world to that slogan in this radio commercial. Take a listen. That was it. It was just a quick 11-second spot that they would put on the radio of just these kids singing good. And that was the spot for Campbell's Soup. Short, concise, but very effective. All right, next up on my list, folks, as one of the most iconic radio commercials of all time is a scare ad. And this particular scare ad is about catching HIV. And HIV actually made my list for one of the most iconic TV commercials of all time because it's just a very scary disease to catch. It's a virus that everyone could get. It's a virus that nobody is immune from. So it is something that is very scary to think that you actually could catch this virus. And there are not enough ads out there warning people about the dangers of HIV and AIDS. So whenever there are advertisements warning you against the dangers, I always feel like it is very attention-getting and very effective. So let's take a listen at this particular AIDS commercial. And this particular AIDS commercial is called HIV is Great. And the reason they titled it with such a bizarre title is because it catches the attention of the audience. Take a listen.
Yeah, I used to work in one of these cubicles. It was like a worker bee. So we're walking through the corridor now. Hi, Jane. See, looking away. That's my old cubicle. So, yeah, this is the coffee machine. You know, I used to wait in the queue with everyone else. Now, look, straight in there, making me coffee. And my mug always used to go missing all the time. Where's my mug? Now, no one messes with my mug. It's my own lift. It's like having a lift to my own office. This is all mine. Nowadays, my boss, he just lets me get on with it, you know.
Your mailbox is empty.
It's my computer here, see that? I've got a pot plant, you know, I talk to that if I get a bit bored. I used to have to arrive early at the canteen just to get a seat. It's quite funny, really. Now, I get a table all to myself. You want to know how I've achieved all this? I became HIV positive.
It's hard to be positive in the face of HIV prejudice. Discrimination is now illegal in the workplace. Visit the National AIDS Trust at nat.org.uk.
So he's talking about all
Yeah,
of these great things that he gets to do now. And you're wondering, well, how does he get to do all of these great things? I'm jealous. I would like to do all of these great things. And he tells you the reason I get to do all of these great things and have all of these perks is because he became HIV, and because of he became HIV positive, and it just lets you know that it's a bad virus to catch. You're going to be shunned by people. You're going to be treated differently, unfortunately, by people if you catch this virus. So it's just another warning against the virus, and I thought it was a very attention-getting commercial to play on the radio. All right, one more commercial to play for you, and I feel like that this is a really effective radio commercial ad, and this is from KFC. And this particular ad is talking about masculinity. And we've done a segment on this show before talking about toxic masculinity, what it takes to be masculine as a man. And we're always struggling as men, trying to keep up. I shouldn't say we're struggling, but we're always trying to keep up with making sure that we always seem masculine to the public. And there are certain things certain behaviors that men do that men shouldn't do, or they would be looked upon as being feminine and not very masculine. So there are certain things that we avoid, certain TV shows we might avoid watching, or music listening to, or certain colors we might not like because we're afraid of what people might think of it. And toxic masculinity is all over the place, especially for men. And I think that this commercial pokes fun at toxic masculinity because this particular commercial that KFC put on is about this man, a bunch of men calling in, talking about some of the non-masculine things that they have done in their life. And they're wondering if they are still a man because of it. And the person on the other end of the phone is saying, yes, you're still a man. But at the end of the commercial, the person that they're talking to on the phone describes to them a meal that they can get from KFC that is very manly and would kind of redeem their masculinity. And it just kind of pokes fun at toxic masculinity. So it's a very, very attention-getting commercial, and I feel like it's one of the most iconic radio commercials of all time.
Hello.
Hi.
Oh, hello, Cedric.
I once handed back an unopened jar of mayonnaise.
You're still a man, Cedric.
I YouTubed how to change a light bulb.
You're a man.
I took a microwave on a camping trip.
You're still a man.
Watching synchronized swimming really calms me.
Man.
I like my eyebrows tidy.
Yes, you do. And you are still a man.
I work out in the colored weights section.
Well, men can do that.
Sports is gross.
Still a man.
My nipples are sensitive.
Mine too. Man.
I don't high five. You know, germs.
I know. Still a man.
I walk.
Yes.
Speed walk.
Speed walking.
Uh-huh.
With the hips thing.
Yep.
Ah, still a man. The fully loaded man meal from KFC for every kind of man.
I love you.
I love you too, man.
I love that because it's just poking fun at toxic masculinity. All right, folks, there you go. That is some of the most iconic radio commercials that have ever existed. So if you're listening to the Super Bowl on the radio, you will hear some radio commercials. Now, I don't know if they will be tailored for the radio or if they'll just play audio from the television commercials, but I would assume that there will be an opportunity for people to buy radio spots for the Super Bowl. And one day in the future, if we ever decide to revisit this topic, one of those commercials from this year's Super Bowl could be on the list as one of the most iconic radio commercials of all time. But there you go, folks. That is the list. We still have more Off the Cuff coming at you live after these words. Stick with us. We will be right back.
Some people call me the space cowboy. Yeah. Some call me the gangster of love.
Welcome back, everybody, to Off the Cuff. Adam Banks here with you.
People call me Maurice. 'Cause I speak.
Folks, today's national holiday is NASSAS Day of Remembrance. NASA's Day of Remembrance is observed annually on the last Thursday of January, and this year will make today, since it is the last Thursday of January, NASA's Day of Remembrance, and that is when we set time aside to remember those who lost their life due to space exploration. Space is a fascinating thing to begin with. I would never go to space. I'm serious. If somebody offered me $1 million to go to space, I would tell somebody else to take the trip. I'm not doing it. I don't have a desire to see what's up there. We're not supposed to be in space. You ask why? Why wouldn't you go up in space? I think there's spirits in space. I think there are things up there that we are not supposed to see. And things that are outside of this stratosphere are things we aren't really supposed to know about. So I do feel like that there are spirits up there that don't come down to Earth. They stay up there in the stratosphere. And you could be introduced to some of those things up in space. You say, Adam, do you believe in ghosts? No, I didn't say that. I don't believe in ghosts, but I do believe in spirits. And I could have a whole segment on spirits, and maybe one day I will when I have the time to do my research and to really articulate my point. But yes, I do believe in spirits. I believe in good spirits, bad spirits, all kinds of spirits. And I believe that up there in space, there are spirits, and I'm not trying to test to see if those are good spirits or not. But NASA's Day of Remembrance is today. Just a little timeline of NASA in general. In 1967, there was a cabin fire during a launch rehearsal test of Apollo 1, and it claimed the lives of 3 astronauts, Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee. In 1986, we had the Challenger tragedy, and that was one of the biggest tragedies of all time in NASA history, and that is when the Challenger exploded 73 seconds into its flight, and there was a school teacher that was going up to space, and the whole world was watching that Challenger go up to space because she was going to be the first teacher in space. Well, 73 seconds into the flight, the Challenger exploded. Everyone obviously lost their lives, and it was a very tragic day in this country. In 2003 is when the Columbia Crew situation happened, only a few moments before Columbia is scheduled to land safely at the Kennedy Space Center. Disaster strikes over Texas and claims the lives of its 7-member crew. And then in 2014, that is when NASA announced the first annual Day of Remembrance. And they started observing this day back in 2014. So this is the 11th year that we have had this holiday as a national holiday. And if you're wondering, how do you observe NASA's Remembrance Day? How can you celebrate this day? Well, you could go outside, look at the sky. If you got a telescope, that's even better. Look at the sky. Just explore from where you're at. Look at the stars. Look at the moon. You could also visit a museum or a planetarium of some kind. I know there's a great one in Hazard, Kentucky. You could share on social media some of your favorite pictures of space. Or you could also share on social media some of those who have passed due to space exploration. Listen, the world famous space organization was founded on July 29th, 1958 in the U.S. NASA builds state-of-the-art satellites that help scientists learn more about the Earth and other celestial bodies. Also, another fact about NASA is that NASA has the Jet Propulsion Laboratory as well as 9 centers and 7 test and research facilities. One of the minimum requirements to be an astronaut at NASA is to have completed 1,000 hours of pilot in command time in jet aircraft. And then finally, the employees at NASA, apart from astronauts, scientists, engineers, writers, secretaries, lawyers, and teachers are also employed at NASA. So NASA could be a great career stop for people out there. And if you're into space exploration, NASA is the top of the line and the company that you want to work for. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this seems like a good place to take Off the Cuff's Song of the Week break. And how about a little Tyler, the Creator, with his new song, Sticky? Enjoy. We'll be back after the song.
Get your hit quick, fast. Popping off.
Better find a mop, it's getting sticky in this.
Hey, I tell you what, this song right here, the edited version made for the radio doesn't give the song justice. I mean, when I heard this song, the unedited version, I was like, okay, this is a banger. I got to make this the song of the week. But listening to the edited version, it cuts out most of the song because there's so much colorful language, I should say, in the song. So they cut it out. But folks, before we take another quick commercial break, I just want to go ahead and remind everybody that the voting is still open for Best of Lex. You can go to my Facebook page and vote for me in 2 categories. That is Host of the Year, Best Radio Host, and also Best radio show or best podcast. That is on my Facebook page if you would like to vote. Still waiting for the Lexington Music Award nominations to come out. They have still not been released yet. Still waiting on those, and I will let you know as soon as those are posted. But folks, stick with us. We still have one more segment to go. We'll be right back.
I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere, man. Across the deserts bare, man. I breathe the mountain air, man. I've traveled, I've had my share, man. I've been everywhere.
Welcome back, everybody, to Off the Cuff. Adam Banks here with you. Last segment of the hour. I, having a January birthday, have recently had to get my driver's license renewed. And also, in addition to having my driver's license renewed, it was my time to get my car re-tagged. Kentucky and the taxes and the payment we have to pay on tags is ridiculous. I'm pretty sure that we're the only state in the union that has to pay that much at the end of the year or on our birthdays for our car tags. So I had to make a quick trip to the clerk's office, as I normally do every year, to re-tag my car. And when I was there, I was just gazing at some of the license plates on the wall. And Kentucky has had a lot of license plates over the years. They've had the license plate with the slogan, Unbridled Spirit. They've got one license plate with a slogan called the Bluegrass State. They've got one license plate up there called It's That Friendly. They've got one specialty license plate up there called Coal Keeps the Lights On. There are so many different slogans on the Kentucky license plate, and you can specialize which license plate that you want to get. But if you get a standard license plate in Kentucky, that slogan is going to say Unbridled Spirit. That is the general slogan that goes on the Kentucky license plate. Now, you can change that by getting a specialty license plate. But every state in this country, you have to drive your car with a license plate on it. And each license plate represents a state, and each state has their own slogan that they put on their license plate. And each state has a unique slogan, and it often appears on the license plate. And these slogans emphasize state pride. It emphasizes natural features or historical significance. So what I have done, because I got curious, because I seen Kentucky has all of these slogans, and we all know the Kentucky license plate slogan, Unbridled Spirit. Or maybe you have a specialty license plate that says the Bluegrass State. But every license plate has a slogan on it. And it got me curious. What do other license plates have for their slogans? And we've seen a lot of these slogans on cars, especially if you do a lot of traveling. You can look and you can just tell by people's license plate, just from a different state, what the slogan is. So I have went through all 50 states, and I have found what each state has on their license plate as their official slogan. Now, just like Kentucky, you can get specialty plates that have different slogans, but these are the plates that have the general slogan on there. So these following slogans are the general slogan for each state on their license plate. So Alabama, I think they've got a cool one. Sweet Home, Alabama. Alaska is the last frontier. Arizona is the Grand Canyon state. Arkansas is the natural state. California is the Golden State. Colorado is the slogan for Colorado is Colorful Colorado. Connecticut is Constitution State. Delaware is the First State, which it was. Florida is the Sunshine State. Georgia has a slogan of Peach State. Hawaii, Aloha State. Idaho, Famous Potatoes. Illinois, Land of Lincoln. Indiana, Crossroads of America. Iowa, the Hawkeye State. Kansas, the Sunflower State. Kentucky, Unbridled Spirit. Louisiana, Sportsman's Paradise. Sportsman's Paradise for Louisiana. Maine is Vacation Land. Vacation Land is the slogan for Maine. The slogan for Maryland is Chesapeake Bay. Massachusetts is the Spirit of America. Michigan is Great Lakes State. Minnesota is Land of 10,000 Lakes. Mississippi is the Mongolian State. Missouri is the Show Me State. Montana, Big Sky Country. Nebraska, The Good Life. Nevada, Battle Born. New Hampshire, Live Free or Die. New Jersey is the Garden State. New Mexico is the Land of Enchantment. New York is the Empire State. North Carolina is First in Flight. North Dakota is Peace Garden State. Ohio is the birthplace of aviation. Oklahoma is the Sooner State. Oregon is the Beaver State. Pennsylvania is the Keystone State. Rhode Island is the Ocean State. South Carolina is Smiling Faces, Beautiful Places. North Dakota is Great Faces, Great Places. Tennessee is the Volunteer State. Texas is the Lone Star State. And then finally, a few more here. Utah is Life Elevated. Vermont is the Green Mountain State. The slogan for Virginia is for lovers. Washington, the slogan is the Evergreen State. West Virginia is Wild and Wonderful. Wisconsin is America's Disneyland, which is a pretty cool, that might be the coolest slogan of them all. And then Wyoming is Forever West. And that is the slogan, folks, for each state in America, and that's what's on every license plate for each state. So every state has a slogan, and I just think it's cool that that's just something that they add to our license plates. All right, folks, I appreciate you listening to another episode of Off the Cuff with Adam Banks. If you liked what you heard today, you'll probably like all of our previous episodes. We archive them all on podcast. You can follow the show on podcasts, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. You can follow the show on social media at Off the Cuff with Adam Banks. You can follow me, the host, on social media at The Adam Banks. We release new episodes every Thursday from 4 to 5, which means we will be back same time, same place right here on WLXU 93.9. And folks, next week will be radio broadcast 300. It's an episode you don't want to miss. Ladies and gentlemen, I am the King of Radio, Adam Banks, and this is Off the Cuff. I will catch you down the road.